Okay. Are we live? Yes, we are. Hello, everyone. The title. The title of today's episode is Fascination for Multidimensional Systems of Thought. So, welcome, dear listeners. We're going to dive into it. You see, we cannot avoid multidimensionality because we find ourselves in a singular dimension. And because we are growing creatures, we are creatures that have to abide by the laws, the universal laws of change. In some sense, whatever dimension, whatever room of existence we find ourselves, the room will change. Either the room will change or we will change. What that means is either the room will push you out or you will leave the room. Now, ancient mysticism, which is something the modern culture has forgotten, you know. They had a sort of mentality towards existence that they saw the same room metaphor I shared right now. They saw existence as a sort of room they're in. Now, either they wait until the room kind of pushes them out of this kind of manifest existence, or in some sense, the Sufi dervishes, the mystical mind at that time, like 1,000 years ago in ancient Persia, they entertained the notion of dying before you die. So even we have Saint Augustine from another part of the world say a quote something like, "To die to self is to be born to eternal life." Something like that, where it's as if the self dies to the self. So one way of acceptance of reality through a singular dimension, it kind of you see beyond that in some sense. You die to yourself, and the blindfold is moved off. Life is contained in language. This is very important to be aware of. It is contained in various stories. Even you hearing me right now, if you were to talk to somebody else about this, I would suddenly fall into the story that your mind entertains. To be honest, in regards to the exploration of true intelligence, there isn't much we can do. It's kind of like imagine like a math exam where the problem is given. You know, we are given this manifest world, we're given structure and form, we're given a sort of evolutionary process in the making. And so now that we are here, it's as if, what was that quote? There was this quote where Ludwig Wittgenstein says, "The limits of my language are the limits of my world." What that means is how far the mind has chosen to explore reality is the limit of the reality. And we are just living as bodies for now, but I feel we're not just bodies, because if we were, we would never have the word mind. So, sorry guys, just give me a second, man. As I mentioned before, like, I tend to listen to music as I speak. It kind of makes it more exciting for me. Um, okay, there we go. let's begin from this current moment here. This is the best way to kind of, I find, explore consciousness. You start from where you are. Right now, when I look at this moment, I imagine I don't know anything about reality. I don't know anything about existence. I don't have any words or concepts. I mean, we can't ignore language, but I'm saying, like, just if I was to look at reality as if I just came into existence right now, there was no sort of past or any sort of ideas of future. I was just looking at how now is designed. I would notice that there is an attention, and there is a first person kind of point of view attention from the eyes to the body. So the first thing that comes into the awareness of a creature, that it is embodied. After it considers it is embodied, it eventually, in some sense, attains a sort of subjective body. It's as if from the dirt came the evolution of the creature's form, and so the form of its body, and now it's kind of like moving to a point, like not now, but it's like it moved to a point where there was a sort of subjective embodiment. Language became the body of our ego. As there came a sort of subjective existence, then there came a sort of permission for the world to have various forms of meaning. So I want to kind of suggest it to you that because our thoughts change quicker than our body, you have way more different, like, many thoughts could pass through the person's mind, but their body could change much slower than their mind, you know? You can say death is a sort of moment where the mind and the body are changing at the same speed. There's a sort of instantaneity of change there. But what I'm trying to get to here is that eventually there was a sort of multidimensional awareness of the singular dimension. That means no longer the physical world was just the physical world. You know, it was now a sort of subjective meaning. We started putting thoughts into objects. We started naming phenomena. As we started naming it, we got convinced that the subjective reality is more real than the objective reality. Therefore, we have many people in society, I just see it throughout the day when I go to downtown Toronto, there's like, it's kind of madness. It's like I say downtowns of countries, like the downtown areas of countries is where the successful and the defeated walk on the same streets. And so I remember in downtown Toronto, it was kind of like, Canada is a really nice place, but of course there's madness everywhere. And so I was walking with my friends, kind of, I should say friends, I should say like acquaintances. And as I was walking, suddenly there was this person which seemed to others as a crazy person talking to himself, shouting in the street. Now, a psychiatrist would have seen that person and said, okay, that's schizophrenia, the person's seeing something that's not there. But what I came to see there was a sort of last effort of sanity. It's as if when the outer world rejects you, where do you go? You go to your inner world. And that person was, it seemed as if they had been so defeated in their social integration that in some sense they were pushed to their own reality. They were living in their own world. It's the same state as anger. When somebody is angry, you can say they are schizophrenic. Let me explain. Let me tell you why. Because now there's different kinds of anger. There's justified anger and there's unjustified anger. When it's unjustified anger, an example would be a person getting angry at somebody who didn't do something wrong, right? So the person's getting angry at the wrong person. Imagine that kind of prank where they tap the guy's shoulder and the guy looks around and sees the person behind him and gets mad at the person behind him, but it's the person behind the person who tapped the guy's shoulder. So what I'm trying to say, it's a sort of unjustified anger. In that moment of anger, if you notice, you're convinced. It's as if nobody can tell an angry man he's wrong. Because that person is too convinced by their inner reality. And it's not, we shouldn't call it schizophrenia. Let me tell you why. Of course, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm just sharing my opinions on the situation. I'm saying that it's because the mind is very unknown, and the mind is a sort of animating system, and it's a sort of animating system that functions with a sort of multidimensional movement, as if when you look at reality, the tree is still there, and in some sense how can I say it? Like you see the grass on the ground and you see many different objects just being still being objects. But what is happening to the world is moving in your mind. That means even though this tree seems to me as if it's still, it's not going anywhere, even though that car seems parked on the street, but it is moving. What is the speed? Like, I don't have the exact number. I think it's 865,000 kilometers per hour. I don't know. Let me just double check this, guys, how fast the Earth moves around the sun. What I'm trying to say is what appears static in one dimension is actually a part of a bigger motion. And what I'm saying is that many of people's kind of, let's say, micro diagnoses of issues is in some sense has a macro kind of condition to it. What that means is there is an unknown factor that no person can consider, not even the person himself can consider. It's just some unknown thing that influenced them. Just a second, guys, I'm going to look for this. Speed of Earth around sun, around the sun. Okay, I was definitely wrong. It's 107,000 kilometers per hour, but I think that number I said was for the solar system, I think. I don't know. Anyways, so at 107,000 kilometers per hour, okay, the Earth is orbiting around the sun. That means our staticness is an illusion, and that's what I'm trying to say. The same way the staticness of that car parked is an illusion in a macrocosmic perspective, where the Earth is kind of moving. So similarly, we're going to see the language of our minds that is in some sense solidified with the personal dimension of experience becomes ignorant of the collective state of existence. That means people start living in their own worlds before actually caring for the world outside. And the world outside is very fascinating. This is what I find, guys. It's not just there's something going on this planet, people are not talking about it and they're not realizing it. Okay, there's a sort of mass isolation occurring. People are choosing to separate themselves because they are not seeing a sort of a path to success. Any person who sees they can't succeed in something, a majority of people will never attempt it. It is only the fool that in a blind society will see the truth. I saw this documentary. I believe this is happening in Japan and many other Asian countries. And I tend to see it happen in some degree, I think more in non-religious countries because uh, how can I tell you, the religious mindset doesn't permit pondering. This is why, do you know how many philosophers religion has prohibited from speech? Do you know how many human beings who had unique views on life, a sort of ideology has not allowed them to communicate it? And we cannot say it is wrong or right. On some manner, the celestial commander has to look at the cosmic structure and to see what is available to it. That means if I was to blame history for being a mistake, I would in some sense be calling my ancestry to be a mistake, which means I am functioning under the premise that my existence is invalid. Many people don't wonder about this on a subconscious level of what really is being life. They're, what is life to them is mainly defined by doership. This is why when you go back in the day, you see a lot of poets, a lot of philosophers, kind of how their imagination opened up was the profession of the sense of doership they had. So you don't understand color, culture, society is a sort of color, is a sort of addition to reality's complexity. So for me, it's like when I wake up in my room, I have to simply worry about just the system of the environment, how my room is, how firm the ceiling is, how alert I am of the environment. But as I go, for example, into society, suddenly my mind begins having to kind of consider many systems of influence at one. Eventually, these systems of influence are moving at such speeds that the person cannot have certainty. So society becomes a sort of uncertain playground, a sort of forest of exploration where the person has to go and, in some sense, through a sort of patience, be able to see the worlds that it has never seen. We must perfect the simple state of living, and we must perfect the complex state of living. The complex state of living is a multidimensional perspective in regards to how existence is classified into various modes. You know, uh, I don't know how to say it, but it's like some poets, some mystics that kind of, you know, very poetically spoke about it like this, as if God is a mirror that has been shattered into many pieces, and every piece reflects the one truth. I believe any person who studies language is going to be a very aware person, because when they study language, they begin to comprehend how there is this sort of movement of images behind their eyes that is kind of amplifying and highlighting the reality in front of their eyes, as if light enters your eyes and then the beam of your attention from your eyes finds an object, and suddenly that object is no longer an object. It has become like, a coffee shop iced cappuccino. So so what I'm saying to you is like, it's one of those situations where you have to step out of how you opened up the world for yourself, how you accepted reality. And you will eventually get to a point where you're going to wonder, how should I filter what I should do, or what is the right thing to do? How should the person maneuver? Like, how with what certainty shall I walk in the uncertain? And this is the very fascinating part. Oh, guys, I think I remembered the 8,000 thing I was saying was the speed of light, actually. No, no, I'm definitely wrong. The speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second, it seems. You see, I gotta explain this part like this because I gotta tell you about the state of the mind and then the body. So you think of it this way. Instead of we just thinking we're just this one moment at first, let us think that we are different aspects of this moment, as if our moment of being is a coin and it has two sides, yet both sides are being the same coin. So let us begin with a notion that the mind has two hemispheres, so the same brain can be seen in two parts. One part, let us say, it is the sort of subjective realm. That's how I term it. It has to do with the subjective evolution of the being, or how subjects began to become a part of the evolutionary process. The other is the objective realm, and this is very clear, how matter is being consciousness. So in some sense, in one manner, we're wondering about how consciousness is being matter. In another manner, we're wondering how matter is being consciousness. I wondered about this. I caught on to this, and I wondered about it, and eventually I received certain satisfactory kind of answers from ancient Vedanta, from ancient Vedic tradition, the Upanishads, you know, the works of Rishi Vyas, the Ribu Gita, Avaduta Gita, Ashtavakra Gita, these ancient texts which began to reveal that the ultimate is not the ultimate cannot be defined. It cannot be contained. You cannot contain the whole universe in your mind, but the whole universe contains your mind. As if if the universe, if existence could speak to you, it would say, in some sense, welcome to the endless. But if experience was to speak, it would say, welcome to the changing. The purpose of experience is change. The purpose of existence is not to change. Okay? So, for example, we see a candle. We say its existential purpose is to be a candle. Okay? But when the candle is lit, similar to how the human being suddenly opens its eyes in a temporary kind of function, in a temporary body, and its consciousness is like the light of the candle that's been lit, we see after a lifetime, the candle's wax eventually melts. And we see that experience was a sort of access to changing data. Trust me, it's as if we are sight in which phenomena is occurring in. Your mind is what's behind the clouds. Your body is what's underneath them. We are in a singular dimension right now. We see things as objective. When we wonder about what is seeing this objectivity, we are pulled towards our memory and imagination. When we wonder what memory and imagination is, we come back to, again, the journey of the objective phenomena. We see the body has moved through life, and as it has moved through life in its waking state, it has conceived itself as a sort of story of a subjective significance. As if a person having thoughts is like a person having access to an invisible room that only they can see unless they vocalize it. You see, so language is in some sense a technology, and this technology is a bridge between the inner dimensions of beings. Okay? So when two creatures speak or make noise or communicate, they're suggesting how they're moving. There is two sorts of intelligence. There's one intelligence where it's from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, and there's one intelligence where it's from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. What that means is there's one approach to reality where it is kind of perfection going to imperfection, and there's another mode where it's imperfection going to perfection, and then there's the ultimate realization. which is of perfection going to perfection. Pretty much what I'm saying is that we cannot name ourselves, even though we do and we speak and we go in society and all this, but we cannot be thoughts. Thoughts come and go. Our attention changes the texture of the world. Multidimensionality became very valuable in the world through I believe, through mathematics. I consider mathematics as a language. And I consider languages as ways that the world has been divided up. And what mathematics kind of showed me was a way, it's like you don't understand how important mathematics is to the free will. The free will has a mathematical explanation. Because it has to do with division. It has to do with there being 0, nothing, then 1, something, and then 2. When I see the greatest scientists tell me, in some sense, on YouTube, I see them, they say from nothing something came about. Okay? I'm like, thanks, but when I learned the number 0, 1, 2, I realized that. When I heard those 3 numbers, I knew. I knew from 0 there came 1, and then from 1 came 2. And then from came 2 came 3, and then from 3 stretched the hands of infinity. So the numerical notion is the fact that things are divided, as if you are one person, I am one person. Together we are 2 people. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a division of a moment of being. And when the moment of being has to be divided, this is why the character in the story cannot exist without duality. This is why for the end of the human's life it will be still wondering about good and bad. Morality will be the game to play for thousands of years to come, because unless we step out of the simulation of our own thought. For me, it's like nobody talks about this. In my education, I was raised in Canada. When I went to school here, I'm telling you, nobody sat down and said, hey, buddy, there's something called a mind. Okay? And this mind functions based on your attention and authenticity. Authenticity means you have found one reality, honest world you can live in. This is kind of my I don't often kind of give activities to people, but I'm saying this is one thing that you got to find a moment in this life where you sit down. I recommend in nature, you sit still and silent. There is no meditation. There is nothing. Forget the concept of any sort of transcendence, enlightenment, or any expansion or advancement or anything. Just sit. Just sit still and silent in nature, and for one moment in this lifetime, forget everybody, even forget what my voice and my thoughts, and just forget everything and just look. Just look at what is here. You don't understand how important of a skill this is. When I incorporated this into my life, it was as if the world suddenly treated me differently, as if karma had to do with how much my eyes were covered by my own ignorance. Look at what is happening, then allow meaning to occur. Because if you don't look at what's happening, there is nothing to have meaning. Sometimes the issue of life being meaningless or not having a meaning and being a sort of nihilistic nightmare is that we are reacting to phenomena rather than observing it and then being active. You know how hilarious it was when when I honestly meditated for the first time. I suddenly caught it. I suddenly understood how playful, how humorous the meditation practice is. It's as if every person who's looked at meditation, you need to have a good sense of humor. I'm telling you, because it is the edge of a world. That's what humor is. Humor is the smooth navigation between kind of the death of one reality into another, you know? Swami Krishnananda says that meditation is no longer necessary. Like pretty much meditation stops. Even the concept changes when one realizes the inseparability of the individual activity and cosmic activity. What that means is you recognize the macrocosm and all products of imagination are also being generated from the same place the convictions of reality are. So you kind of begin to see, rather than there being first a body, there being matter and then a mind, you begin to kind of realize, oh wait, there is a mind first, then a body. So it's as if the subjective evolution, I have to say it to the mainstream, as if there was the objective evolution first and the subjective evolution. But I am telling you, there's a big chance that the subjective evolution was just another dimension that was present and we hadn't tapped into it. It was always there. It was a discovery, but something that, if only remembered, could have not been a discovery. So it's like a discovery that's also a remembrance. So once you wonder about the field of intelligence, once you wonder about the mind, it's very unique because it's kind of like, imagine a movie projector projecting something on a film. Pretty much what I'm saying is we are shifting from God being in man's mind, or the collective unknown being in the individual known, towards the individually known being in the collective unknown, into man suddenly seeing that he's a product of God's mind. This same notion, it's very fascinating. Thoughts, because they move as a field of intelligence, the world doesn't acknowledge this yet. You know, trust me, a lot of the thoughts I'm sharing, a lot of the words that I'm saying, they are not just they're not just things I've seen. It's like some of the things I say to you guys are in the middle of me saying it. My experience behind my eyes is a sort of remembrance of a field of lifehood. So right now, think of it this way. The Buddhist person does some spiritual practice and suddenly remembers all his past lives, suddenly remembers he's this eternally reincarnating soul, kind of going from life to life, changing costumes of reality, you know? As if the world is a mask for this eternally unknown force that's endlessly reincarnating through different viewpoints. Okay? So this Buddhist person who's tried the spiritual practice suddenly eventually wonders, okay, so what about the soul of my soul? Like, like I thought first there was the body, then I found there was the mind. I thought there was only the mind, then I found the soul. Then I saw the kind of lifeline of the soul, and suddenly I saw, like, for example, what is the soul of the soul of the soul, as certain mystics have explored in history. They will eventually realize it is nothingness. Do you understand? So this is the hilarious thing in philosophy. It's like something that philosophers are all acting cool about, but it's hilarious. You know, this is why good philosophers become there. You see, this is my sign of intelligence. It's humor. Any person who has humor, I am telling you, your mind is you're not forced into submission by the fear of the end. That's the humorous ability. That is the ability that it's like something inevitable is seen, yet it can be turned around in meaning. So there has been moments where I have failed and I have kinda banished myself, banished my ego to a silent corner. Okay, there has been moments where I have succeeded, where my ego was like a kind of king that had just got his kingdom and was feasting on 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 kind of its desire. I have lived through many moments. I have kind of been, my soul has been a director of my mind, constantly seeing the various way the senses of self audition as the true being in front of it. I have seen not only films, but I have in some sense seen actors. And I have not only seen actors, I have seen existential forces. That means in some person, if the person entertains science, you cannot blame the periodic table of elements. Do you see? It's as if, how can a person uh, be anything if they are the elements? So on some level, reality is kept multidimensional. So scientists are using multidimensionality in the sense that they're saying through evidence and experiments and results, there's this deeper dimension of atomic structure. Like when you look at a tree, you don't see it, but it's there. And what do we find in the religious landscape? We find we find them saying, listen, there's something you don't see, which is God's will in heaven, and you don't see it, but it's there. And constantly we have shows on this earth, theatrical performances of ideology, constantly giving us what the marketing, what the unknown is. And ladies and gentlemen, let Mr. Within roar this as loud as I can, because it's one lifetime and it ends quick. You are not a thought, and you never were. Words are generated by your attributeless attention. Your responsibility as a being is to engage as your moment. It's as if, like, why? I don't understand the New Age community. What is my spiritual mission? What is my soul purpose? What is, like, that's oh, is this child's play? What is this? It's like a long process of nature. This science project called humanity. Forget any story you attach to it. It's like this project. It's something that's happened and it's here. Our ancestors lived the way they did. Okay, enough. We can't. There's no point in complaining about the past that is past. The purpose objectively becomes appreciating and truly and completely experiencing this biological position you're in. No species is as able as the human being. The dumbest, let us say, the most, I don't want to say dumb, that word is unnecessary. I'll say the most ignorant human being on the surface of this planet still towers in intelligence above all the animal species on this planet. And there are, of course, exceptions, guys. I remember, I gotta say this because I feel it's important. I remember seeing a YouTube video which brought tears to my eyes in two ways. As if one of my eyes, there was tears of kind of sadness and sorrow and failure of the species. It was as if I was seeing an inefficiency, it brought tears to my eyes why it existed. And then it's as if my other eye was, in some sense, the tears that were coming down from that eye was in some sense the tears of a sort of, how can I tell you, as if a reverence for the power of nature. And so the video I saw on YouTube was this tragic situation that still occurs in certain, I will say, unupdated cultural countries. And it was this video of an honor killing in India, and how this cow stops it, and it brought tears to my eyes, guys, because the issue was this: there's some certain girls on this planet are living extreme lives that people don't know much about. They're living lives where if they don't abide by the system they're in, their own family chooses to be hostile to them, as if the child's dishonor of the family's pride deserves it's like it should, the punishment for the child, which should be to not exist, as if the pride of the culture cares more than the person, is more important than the human being that's there. Okay, and so the story is this girl, in this strict kind of family in India. She leaves home, she gets married, and she, after many years, comes back to her family and tells her father and uncle who are there that what she's done, and she's married and she's kind of gone back. The father and the uncle start stabbing the girl. And this is like a camera footage, and you see this cow. You see this actual cow. In India, cows run free. This cow suddenly charge at the person who was attacking this girl. You see this, it brought it, sorry guys, I'm getting emotional, but it's like you see nature protecting the human being from its own foolishness. Man, talk got too intense. So, I don't know what to say, but the human being is born twice. You're born physically and you're born subjectively and maintained and preserved through the dynamism of how language is reality for you and how many systems, subjective systems are there. Subjectivity is the multidimensional allowance. Objectivity is it's the singular point, as if like your mind is using your body to envision various ways that it can exist. One dimension is echoing into a sort of void infinitude which resembles that of a higher intelligence. I don't know how to say. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. The fascination for multidimensional systems of thought is pretty much how children are going to open their eyes in this world, and they're going to truly want to live it. They're going to want to actually live life. And when they see how life can be lived and they see all the efficient potentials, they will have to make a decision. They will have to make a decision. Should I watch inefficiency in the civilization? Should I watch the world burn and just carry on walking to a different part of the forest? Should I let one part of the forest burn and walk to another part of the forest? Or should I do something about the forest? To do something about the forest does not mean to save the forest. It means to see the simplest way, the most natural way there can be a solution. You know, it's as if, think of it this way. If you have one problem, it doesn't matter how long it takes you think about it. But if you have many problems to solve, you require your answers to also have a sort of instantaneous efficiency to it. As if you're not getting convinced by the data and you're seeing it constantly in various ways until you find one way where it's efficient and you implement. And suddenly that thought becomes the mover of the life in that moment. So you're not a thought, you are aware of thoughts. It's as if like, just like how you even though your attention is originating from your eyes to your physical body, let's say like right now, look at your hand, okay? So your attention is originating from the body to the body. Because it's occurring like this, there is a sense that you are not your body, but you're also your body. So the most easiest way people storified it was that there's a soul and a body. There's somebody in this vehicle. There's a spirit in the machine. Okay? Now, after the simulation era ends, after the era of ideal worship ends, and in some sense the era of advanced communication kind of speeds up, what occurs is a sort of a recalibration of civilization to the freedom of the nature of the being, and the freedom of the nature of the being must be individually realized before collectively applied. That means, think of it this way, the collective is how all of us are being together, one intelligent system. So if all the parts of this system perform to their max intelligence, to their max efficiency, guess what? The system automatically updates. And we have to, in some sense, create, this is what I thought how society should be designed. It should be designed like video games. Let me tell you why. Yeah, in video games, in certain multiplayer online video games, what you find is that there's a character, and this character has to go do certain quests. It has to go achieve certain results. Okay, so I thought the world, imagine it was designed in a way where the person began traveling around the world, and whatever economical institution it found itself, or educational or whatever institution, there were quests that the person could in some sense handle, as if the civilization found enough of a trust with among itself that it was like, okay, I have a problem now, instead of marketing nonsense on billboards, we market global issues. We market things where children are born and they're like, okay, there's something to do. You know, when there's nothing to do, chaos, anarchy is the best party. I mean, like, what do you want me to say? When there's not, it's like we don't understand how many people throughout the day, it's an exchange kind of mentality they have in their mind. Their behavior, their niceness, their decency, their morality, their belief systems has to do with a sort of subconscious kind of them trying to think about the exchange. What am I getting if I do this? What am I not? Like, so there is a sort of value system there. But that value system doesn't need to occupy the whole life. It's like the ancients said it. The ancient sages said it like this: if the mind is a bad master but a good servant. And when I say your language is a sort of technology, in some sense, I'm trying to say the mind is here to serve you. It is not you. No thought can be you. Nothing. The only thing that is changeless in a changing world is change. So the spirit of change is the mightiest form of God. It is the will of God, they say, in the religious tradition. But in a secular way, you can say, in some sense, it is how the universe is being alive, how the universe is growing, how the universe is moving. And so it all has to do with perception. As Aldous Huxley says, there's things known and things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. And you, dear viewer, dear listener, whoever you are, however long this talk, passes the test of time, we are at the doors of perception. We are where subjective experience and objective existence are intersecting. And there is so much that we need to wonder about. I don't believe that, I think the title system in civilization has failed us. The classification and status ways the civilization is kind of organized into, they do not serve us. Their time is up. Nature is like, okay, human beings, you attempted to classify yourselves, but you couldn't do it well, so at least calm down for a bit and re-envision. Because your eyes are not your biological eyes. They are the collective sphere of your awareness. Did you know that? Your data, you're not just getting visual data in the moment. Aside from all the other senses and aside from all the various ways these sensory data coagulate or align or in some sense they rhyme or there's a sort of rhythm. For me, my experience with unknown collective fields of intelligence or collective beings has been in some sense not through a relationship of language, as if once the person graduates from having the world only contained experientially in language, they suddenly orient towards the secrets of direct experience. So their attention behaves not as anything they could have been taught or known. So it's you become the unknown that is moving your knowledge rather than being the known that the unknown has to move. And so it is the unknown that is the only hope for our species. The fact that we are wrong in the stories we tell ourselves makes us feel we can be right. What I mean is it's like we gotta see beyond the reflection in the mirror. The eyes of the moment are the presence of the intelligence in the universal sector. Size doesn't exist for a moment of being. There's no classes. This doesn't mean that the future civilizations should not have like various classes and various things. It should just be based on an honor system and a skill system. That means whoever actually, it's as if like imagine like a city where everybody in that city is a martial art master. Imagine something like the movie. I mean, the movie Kung Fu Hustle was hilarious, but I'm saying like, imagine something where every person is a master of their own creative attention. And so it becomes a performance-based civilization where people are no longer discriminating about the objective, they are becoming fascinated about the subjective ability of every human being. And it becomes eventually, it'll lead to this compassionate point where the civilization wants to help every single person because they don't know what their minds can, how their minds can suddenly honor the species with ingenuity or whatever, you know, with the genius of their own design. For every person's eyes are their own eyes. That's the beautiful thing. This is why in this lifetime I've been managed to kind of ignore a lot of anger, because I realize very simply nobody has my eyes, right? So nobody can judge me. You know, and if there's only something that I see, and they say only God sees the person's thoughts or something, so I would say in that sense that God has nothing to do with the outside world, that in some sense is kept inside. Let us see what it would be like, at least. I mean, it's a temporary lifetime. We're all gonna kind of, the final curtain will be pulled at some point for all of us. But I'm just saying, while we're here, let's just see what the most efficient civilization looks like. Like, let's give that a try, you know. And even though there's so many reasons not to, let's say there's like a list that's like a book that's 300 pages of reasons why we shouldn't, you know. But I'm saying, what if? Let's just try it. And that's my mentality. We create a new world in a world that is dying. And we get inspired. We try to preserve whatever we can from the ancient world. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Something incredible that happened, uh, I'll, I'll say this is the last thing, is that I began to see my moment of being is my greatest teacher. And then all of knowledge realigned to how I truly am as a being. And I feel this can happen to everybody. You just have to care for what is actually alive here that is being you. Much blessings and namaste.